I want to talk today about a very simple concept for marketing. It's a concept that is taught in MBAs and marketing and in general management studies, except that it's not given, I think, the importance it deserves. And if there's one thing you need to know in marketing, it's what I'm going to talk about today. This is going to help you a lot in devising your strategy, in setting a proper strategy, and in keeping path with what your competitors are doing. So what's the secret marketing formula? It's the concept of POP and POD, points of parity and points of differentiation. It's a very easy concept, super simple and super powerful. And that's what we love, right? When it's simple and powerful. So what's a POP? Points of parity. Let's start with that. These are the elements, the marketing elements, if you want, the perception from the target audience that they must have of your brand to take your brand seriously, to consider using you. The POD, the points of differentiation, on the other hand, are the elements that would make your target audience choose you, your brand, versus a competitor. So a POP, without a POP, it's a necessary condition but not sufficient. You need it, but that's not going to make people consume your product or your service. A POD, on the other hand, is what's going to make people choose you. But having PODs without POPs, you're not even considered in the mix. So it's important to really have both. Let's take, for example, an airline company. So start out looking at in your industry. Let's take airlines. A typical, and let's take traditional airlines, because the traditional airlines are an industry and the low-cost airlines are another industry. They cater to slightly different target audiences with a different business approach. For a standard airline, what would be typical POPs? Well, to be considered, at minima, people should believe that you have minimal security, that your planes don't fly and crash. This is why you choose certain companies over others, because you trust them. A typical POP would be for a normal standard airline is that they serve you a meal during the flight, at least for long haul or medium haul flights. They're serving you meals. This is a POP. Most people won't buy, let's say, a long haul flight if they don't get a meal in the flight. And I'm talking about standard companies. These would be typical POPs. There are others. On the other hand, for the airlines, some airlines would compete, and it's very difficult to compete between airlines. Some airlines would compete would use their PODs as their national identity, for example. If you take Air France, even their slogan for a while was about flying France. France is in the air. So basically, they would tell you you're living the French way of life. This was Emirates. Emirates Airlines also, for a long time, their slogan was Fly Emirates. And what they meant by this is when you're flying Emirates Airlines, you're living the Emirates airline industry experience, the Dubai experience, which is luxury, multicultural. So when you go in the plane, you have to feel that from the moment you buy your ticket to when you go into the plane to when you land. So this whole experience has to be there. So what do you do with your PODs? Well, these PODs, like I was saying for Emirates Airlines, have to be reflected in everything your company does. If your POD is, I'm going to be more luxurious than my competitors, well, this has to be felt in how your employees act and react and are presented. It has to be felt in the packaging. Let's say you're selling a product, and the packaging and the customer service, etc., etc. Maybe even in the prices. A low price won't necessarily reflect a certain kind of luxury. So once you list your PODs and you list your POPs, you need to think about your business. How do you reflect all this? How do you make people know that you have the POPs, but really understand that you are about your PODs, your points of differentiation, so they can consume your brand? Very important elements. You can take any industry, any brand, and make the exercise about this. Actually, if you Google, if you go on the web and you Google points of differentiation, points of parity, you're going to find lots of very nice tables explaining, giving you examples for real companies. Some of them are a bit bullshit, but you can make up your own. Make it for your startup. It's good if your company and your startup. This is going to make a huge difference in the way you act. But it's not enough to say, oh, I know my POPs and I know my PODs. What happens over time is that when you have strong PODs and you're attracting clients, your competitors start copying you. And everybody in your, all in your industry start doing the same PODs you have. And guess what? A POD becomes over time a POP, a point of parity. Let's take again the airline industry. For a long time, some airlines were, their points of differentiation were the loyalty programs they had, and they would communicate about the loyalty programs they had. Guess what? Every airline started doing loyalty programs, and it became now a very basic thing. You won't now choose airline A over airline B just because of their loyalty program, unless you're already hooked in, but that's another matter. Once you're hooked in and you have the points and you want to benefit from the points, that's another issue. For a long time also in the airline industry, until recently actually, a lot of points of differentiations was communicating on the business class. Turkish Airlines did lots of ads on this, Emirates Airlines did this, Qatar Airlines did this. In the US, every airline started talking about how luxurious their business class was. Well, guess what? Now it's pretty hard to differentiate between the different business classes, and this is becoming slowly a point of parity. And this is exactly what innovation is all about, is how do you keep innovating your strategy and your business and your product and your services so that you keep creating PODs all the time to always be on top of your competitors. This is super important. Think about this. A lot of companies die because they forget to renew their PODs, and their PODs become POPs and they're not competitive anymore. Or even worse than this, they think they have PODs, but these PODs are not relevant to the target audience. So to another example, before we close this video, another example is universities. Our universities, for a few years, some universities used to communicate, I'm talking a while back, about the fact that they had very nice libraries, or great gyms, or sports facilities. Today, these points of differentiations became points of parity. You wouldn't consider a university to be credible if it doesn't have a minimum gym, campus, library, etc. So, and you can see this, by the way, in all software companies also. It's always the same approach. So, to recap the whole thing, choose the industry, understand very clearly your target audience, and then start thinking about your POPs and PODs and how do you compare them to your competitors. It's a very simple trick, it's a very simple tool, and it will help you, it will help you a lot in your business, in setting your marketing. In reality, if there's one thing you need to know about marketing, it's that one. I hope you like this video. Please subscribe and see you soon.